still thinking about Elijah. And, he's on that literal mountaintop moment, 1 minute, experiencing this miraculous, like just spectacular moment. But then he goes from that and feeling the fullness of God's presence showing up in such a literal way, wicking up all the water and everything. I mean, just this enormous, spectacular moment. And then even Elijah, I think, what I'm hearing, and what I can imagine because I am human too, was feeling alone. Just feeling lonely. And I think that's one of the things that's remarkable that's standing out to me this morning as we're moving through this together, is that part that God sends him back to the same place. And so what's different? What happened is that, yes, he needed food. Yes, he needed rest. And he also needed to be reminded that he's not alone. He's not gone back to that place alone. And when I hear that this morning about all those different things, and he's not in this and he's not in that, he's in the whisper, I think, again, for me, this is Kevin speaking, I think he was in all of it. I think he was showing up in any way he could. He tried this, I'll try that, I'll try this, I'll show up this way. Maybe what he needs is this, maybe what he needs is this. What Elijah needed in that moment was the still, the quiet, the comfort, the reassurance, the steadiness. Right. You are with me. You see me. You provide for all of my needs, and you are with me. And when you send me back, I know you go back with me. I go back with you. We go back to this thing, but we go back together. And that is a completely different scenario. It's so true. To stand in front of someone face to face, it's experiential. It's something I can't explain in words or in a sermon, but it's that experience. Feeling seen and seeing them seeing you. And I think that's really timely because it's been a rough week. Anyone else? Yeah. Rough week, rough couple of weeks. I mean, to cite a couple of the things, yesterday, 42 million people lost access to Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. SNAP is the country's largest anti-hunger program. It dates back to the Great Depression, and then they didn't need it anymore, and it went away for a period, and then it came back in the 60s. And it's been here for 6 decades, or, 6 decades. And it's never been disrupted in this way in those 60 years. And a lot of people are feeling alone and scared and have lots of questions. Most of the recipients are seniors, families with kids, and people with disabilities, who are receiving on average $6.23 a day, which isn't a whole lot. But it's still a big difference between having something and having nothing. A report released on October 23rd, just a little over a week ago, found that the first 10 months of 2025 is already the deadliest year for people in immigration and customs enforcement, or ICE, custody in 20 years. Deaths haven't been this high since the Bush administration, and those are, again, just the ones who actually died, not the ones that are sick or suffering or need treatment and aren't getting it. And that's, again, just through October. The number comes as ICE is holding nearly 60,000 people in immigration detention, the highest number in several years. Former agency officials are even warning that increased detention population, decreased oversight, and an increase in street and community arrests and continued difficulties staffing the medical teams are going to result in more deaths. This summer, ICE received about $70 billion to hire more staff, including deportation and detention officers, and increase its detention space. Across the country, media and immigration advocates have reported overcrowding, unsanitary conditions, and issues with food and health care access, a byproduct of rapid scaling up of immigration arrests. Yet another report from a week and a half before that, all of this in the last 3 weeks, all of these reports, all from NPR, or that's the source that I was reading anyway. This one's from October 12th. It shared that as the government shutdown goes on, there are a lot of mixed messages on Capitol Hill about the healthcare issue at the center of the fight. It's not just a battle over political messaging. There are real health insurance marketplaces where real people, 24 million people, buy coverage. The amount the federal government picks up for their monthly premiums makes a big difference. And now a reading from Matthew 25, starting in verse 31. And the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all his angels with him. He will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people from one another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, and needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick and in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." And then he said to those on the left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you didn't invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." And they will also answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry, or a stranger, or sick, and not help you?" He will reply, "Truly, I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." And today, November 2nd, my assigned topic is the core value: we value and respect all people equally. And it's hitting a bit differently. Now, injustice isn't new. Inequalities, not new. Systems of power and oppression, not new. Along with comparison, jealousy, and violence, all in the origin story from the beginning. But in contrast, the way God and later Jesus interact with injustice and equality was and remains one of the most radical things about them. Jesus had no sooner entered this world as an infant, laying in a humble animal feeding trough, when his family had to escape itself to Egypt, immigrants in a foreign land, fleeing the oppression of an unjust government. He lived what we would likely consider a humble life in Nazareth, a small village with a population likely of between 200 to 400 people. Pretty small town. It was an isolated, typical Galilean village, neither large nor significant, believed to be no more than a few dozen houses on a few acres of land, surrounded by hills with some agriculture and olive pressing. And of course, we don't have to guess what the people of Jesus' day thought of Nazareth, because they tell us. When Philip talks to Nathanael, the scoffer turned disciple, he says, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Then, as Jesus leaves this humble home and enters his public ministry, his very first miracle is at a wedding, to spare a family from embarrassment. Just spare them from shame. Like it's not I don't know. I think we think it's bigger or more spectacular, but his first miracle was to spare a family from embarrassment, of having run out of wine at a wedding. And instead, he covers their shame and even replaces it with esteem, the guests all saying, "Oh, this host saved the best wine for last." And I think that's a valuable insight about Jesus and who he is and how he lives and how he moves and how he operates. This is followed immediately in John's gospel by the first clearing of the temple in Jerusalem at Passover. In John chapter 2, verse 14. In the temple courts, he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves. Do you remember the doves? Yes. I've preached on this before. Remember that they were a specific, humble sacrifice required by the law, but was particularly made available for the poor. So I don't think it's insignificant that out of all the money changers and things that you could buy, all the different offerings, this is the one that is singled out in John's gospel and singled out in what Jesus says. In the temple courts, Jesus found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both the sheep and the cattle. He scattered the coins of money from the money changers and overturned their tables. And to those who sold the doves, he had some choice words. "Get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a market." To those people, for that sacrifice, for that offering, that is what was so moving to him in that moment that he flipped tables and overturned them. We see Jesus physically removing these structures of shame and imposed inaccessibility, particularly to the poor. And this too, just like the miracle, is quite telling about who Jesus is. Church, Jesus takes the treatment of those in need very, very seriously, and so should we. Not long after this, we see Jesus needing to escape from the religiously devout of his day. And rather than journey around Samaria to return to Judea, which was a customary for a good Jew, Jesus traveled directly through this ostracized land. And he connects with a Samaritan woman, alone, at noon, at a well. If you're keeping score, that's at least 4 strikes. And we learn this particular woman's story And then the culture of the day would have really deemed this exchange even more scandalous. And this unmarried Jewish man asks her for a drink of water. I don't know if we have anything quite similar, but perhaps imagine that a priest and his youth group roll into Las Vegas, which you're already thinking, now that's a choice. Then imagine this priest sends the youth group to the buffet at the hotel and heads to the nightclub at 2 a.m. I don't know, something like that. Something that a good religious boy simply would not do. And yet, there he is, asking the showgirl for a sip of her water. And even this woman was shocked by the exchange. You're a priest, I'm a showgirl. Priests don't associate with showgirls. But this one does. And y'all, we're barely into the intro of John's gospel. We're 4 chapters in and we're getting all of this. And we can already start to see an image come into focus. Who this Jesus, who this God-made man, this living example, this walking gospel is. Can we see? That gospel and the other 3 go on to tell of how Jesus breaks the law, or at least their understanding of it, and heals the sick on the Sabbath. He has lunch with corrupt tax collectors. He opts not to uphold the law in defense of a woman caught in the very act of adultery. He heals the servant of a centurion soldier, the oppressor, an occupier. He regularly keeps company with women and temple school dropouts and fishermen. He averts the trap of the religiously devout with a verse from Deuteronomy that they all knew so well and recited multiple times a day in their prayers just to put it back to them. It's really this simple. When asked, what's the greatest law in the commandment in the law? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And then he adds, beyond the verse of Deuteronomy, again, bringing the law, but then also fulfilling it, and love your neighbor and love yourself. Do we see? Sure, Kevin, we see. But also, in as many ways, or perhaps more, we can also be as blind as the disciples we so often judge and criticize. Of course, we value and respect all people equally. The temptations being to either say it as so unattainably highfalutin or as so patently obvious that we don't really stop to consider it and to let it challenge and to check us and allow it to shape and reshape us. We don't allow it to direct and redirect and redirect and redirect and then redirect our lives, our behavior, and our speech. In a world that seems to value self above community, particularly apparent here in our modern Western worldview, and where respect is a word reserved only for those who think like us, whoever us happens to be in that scenario, this is increasingly challenging. The degree of difficulty is going up exponentially. First, we have to be honest with the reality that we do not live in a society that values and respects all people at all, let alone equally. Second, we need to recognize what real movement towards this core value means and looks like beyond just the statement on our pamphlets and our website. I think this paradigm is really well stated by Angela Davis, who said, in a racist society, it is not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist. And we can insert any facet of our very segmented society in here. In a homophobic society, in a transphobic society, in an ableist society, a neurotypical society. It is not enough. It is not enough to not endorse the oppression. We must actively and openly work against the oppression. Ibram X. Kendi expounds on this quote from Angela Davis in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, saying, what's the difference between just being not racist and being anti-racist? A person endorses either the idea of a racial hierarchy as a racist, or they embrace racial equality as an anti-racist. One either believes problems are rooted in groups of people as a racist, or locates the roots of problems in power and policies, not in people, as an anti-racist. One either allows racial inequities to persevere as a racist, or confronts racial inequities every time they encounter them as an anti-racist. The claim of not racist neutrality is just a mask for racism. And I particularly love the framing of that middle sentence. Did it hit you too? One either believes that the problems are rooted in people, or that the roots of problems are in power and policies. And that is what we are speaking against. That is the work to which we are called to stand up. Kendi also shares the good news is that racist and anti-racist are not fixed identities. We can be racist one minute and an anti-racist the next. What we say about race and what we do about race in each moment determines what, not who, we are. Ijoma Alua says the beauty of anti-racism is that you don't have to pretend to be free of racism to be an anti-racist. Anti-racism is the commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, including in yourself. Let those words sink in. The more I think about this, the more I see this core value pointing us to our other core values. Or said another way, valuing and respecting all people equally, it deeply relies on receiving and offering God's grace, first to yourself and also to others in abundance. And it also hinges on embracing learning and discovery. And listen, this is a lifelong area of growth for all of us. There is no book we can read or sermon we can listen to that can fix this. Any belief of, I have arrived, is in itself atrophy. It's a constant movement. Imagine life as a moving sidewalk, moving in the opposite direction. Simply walking at a normal pace just maintains the status quo. To move forward takes something more. It takes real and repeated effort. Is everyone still awake? All right. Let's do a visualization. A little visualization exercise together. Readjust yourself in your seats. Go ahead, move a little. Go ahead, readjust. We can all make the noise together. Get comfortable. Let's all take a breath. Close your eyes and visualize this. You're all going on vacation this afternoon, and your flight leaves at 1 p.m., and it's already after 11, and you're still in church because the guy up front is still preaching. So you rush out the door as soon as he's done speaking and rush to the airport. You get there just in time. You make it through TSA, thanking everyone for working without pay during the shutdown, and you make it to your gate and aboard the plane. The pilot welcomes you aboard, and you find your seat. You didn't have a chance to stop for any snacks or reading materials in the airport, but you see there's a magazine in the pocket of the seat in front of you about a hot new tech startup with the CEO's picture on the cover. You check it out just for something to pass the time. You have a smooth flight, you land, and your flight attendant comes through and collects your trash. You get off the plane and check into the hotel. You're starving because you didn't have time to eat because Kevin was teaching today and you couldn't even stay for communion. So you drop your bags in the room and you head down to the hotel restaurant. Having eaten, you start to settle into vacation mode. You see the couple at the table beside you is smiling and celebrating their anniversary, and it makes you smile too. Okay, open your eyes. In your mental image, what gender was the pilot? What was their race? What did that tech CEO on the cover of the magazine look like? What was their gender? And lastly, how about that couple at the table next to you at the restaurant? What was their sexual orientation? And look, this is human nature. This is human nature that we are fighting against here. It is hardwired into the amygdala, the oldest part of the human brain, to find comfort in the familiar, to seek the similar. And when it encounters the unexpected, it floods our brain with stress hormones and triggers our fight or flight response. As Valerie Alexander, a female tech CEO, shares in her TED Talk how to outsmart our unconscious bias, none of us in 100 lifetimes would ever be able to change that trigger inside our brains. So our only solution is to change what's outside our brains, to consciously turn the unexpected into the expected so we don't have an unconscious hormonal reactions that keep our society from moving forward. So, okay, how do we do that? What does that mean? Well, here are 3 things she suggests we can try. As you go about your day, visualize your day before things happen. And whatever mental picture you get, change it. So, for example, you have an appointment with a new doctor. Visualize it. Whatever your default person is, just change it in some way. Change something about it. Maybe you're going out for lunch after church today. I've talked a lot about food. I'm sure you're thinking about it. Visualize the restaurant and who's sitting around you, and then change it. Simply practice opening yourself to different possibilities. That's one. When we do encounter the unexpected, number 2, have the courage to examine how your own behavior. Ask yourself, is this how I would handle this interaction if this person looked like me? Or if this person didn't look like me? 3, make a conscious effort to expose yourself and others to that which is currently unexpected and doesn't need to be. Go to the churches, hire the employees, patronize the businesses, vote for the candidates who have earned the position and are challenging the norms. There are enormous and long-ranging consequences when we can change the unexpected to the expected. We normalize things by making them expected. This is the very first step. And as I said, this work is never done. Never. It is, by definition, uncomfortable. Its purpose is to move us out from what is comfortable and familiar. And it also is uncomfortable because it requires us to push back against unjust systems. It invites us not only to hold ground, but to actively take it back. It requires more than not laughing at an inappropriate joke or comment. It asks that we speak up and out against inappropriate jokes and comments, and that we do so every single time we hear one. Welcome to the real work of following Jesus. Welcome to truly following Jesus where he goes. Because do you remember where he walks? What's that, you say? It looks narrow? Not a lot of people going that way? And yet, that is precisely where we see Jesus going over and over and over and over again. Moving among the marginalized. And let's be honest, aren't we glad he did? Because isn't that where all of us are found? We don't start at the center. But thankfully, Jesus is simultaneously the incarnation of the center, but also moving among the margins. He meets us right there, right where we are, and he invites us to follow him, not in the comfortable confines of the church, but out in the messy margins of the world, out on the streets and in the schools and in our homes and in our offices, out with those other messy human beings with whom we share this timeline. And look, are we going to mess up? 1,000%. I have, and I will mess up over and over again, and so will you. But listen, church, if we're too afraid to mess up, we will not move. If we are too afraid of saying the wrong thing or messing up, we won't move at all. And that's precisely where I think the church and we as individuals have gotten stuck and have been stuck for too long. And again, this is why it is so important that the first core value is receiving grace. I know it's technically receiving and offering grace, but it starts with receiving in abundance for yourself. You cannot offer something that you yourself do not have. Grace is critical in this work. Grace is the element without which none of this evolves and exists. It is the foundational element. Grace is like the carbon, only grace is the building block of all spiritual life. Even our mission statement of loving fearlessly, is grace not the key that unlocks fearlessness? And everything else? Making it possible to embrace learning and discovery on the way to working out, valuing and respecting all people equally in our everyday lives. Because we have to move out beyond the point from which we started, and we have to give ourselves the grace to move like that. Or else we're going to stay right where we are, and things are going to stay right like they are. And Jesus has called us to so much more. So, in addition to Valerie's points, I would encourage us to start here. To start with grace. If you missed Terry's sermon last Sunday on receiving and offering God's grace in abundance, please go check it out. It's available on our website, on Facebook, on YouTube, any of those places that sound like, oh, I've heard of that one, go there. And or, if you haven't checked out Season 4, Episode 2 of our podcast, Staying at the Table, I really, sincerely, earnestly encourage you to check it out. Season 4, Episode 2 talks about our core values and the way that they're worked out in our church. And I really encourage us to check those out and then to work out our thoughts around them. Work them out with yourself and then work them out with others. And with others who are somehow different than you, whether older or younger, a different gender or race, a different background, different theology. Jesus changed these people's lives by crossing paths and standing in front of them. by positioning himself in front of them. And I believe Jesus was changed too by being in front of them. That's the gift of experience, like we were talking about from the beginning. That's the gift of experience. It changes us if we allow it. So, allow it. Let us be changed by the people in front of us. Let us be intentional and move in spaces where we have the opportunity to be in front of people who are different than us. Let us move through grace into a fearless love that pushes back on the darkness of dehumanization, devaluation, and disrespect, and keep shining the light of value and respect for all people. Amen.